Hello, aspiring event planners. As always, I'm your host, Michael Betker. After a bit of a break here, hope you guys had a wonderful spring break. Back to reality here. So wanted to spend a little bit of time today just closing the loop with you regarding a couple things. First and foremost, of course, is our final project. I know there are maybe a few questions here with what's going on here in week 15. Obviously, as we know, the date is due. The final project is due on Friday. So want to make sure you make note of that, obviously, and get that done. So we'll talk about that in detail here, kind of my expectations for that. Walk you through an example today, just so you're not confused by anything. And I can see, honestly, where there'd be some confusion, perhaps. So I want to make sure you guys are aware of every little detail so everybody does great. And then we'll also talk about the final exam a little bit as well, and just kind of expectations there and kind of when that's going to open and how that's going to work. Similar to the midterm, I think I ended up ultimately giving you guys 36 hours to take the test, and then you have 2 hours once you start it, is how we'll handle that. So that will start on Tuesday, May 11th, by the way, at 7 p.m. and then be open until 7 a.m. on the 13th. So 36 hours will be open, and you can take that whenever you wish during that period of time. More on that a little bit. Last thing I want to mention is just talk about some tips I want to give you guys as you wend your way through college careers. I know lots of you guys are getting closer to graduation, if not already imminent graduation. So I want to give you some tips on how to break into the field of event planning. So that's it in a nutshell here. Let's proceed, shall we? So if you remember from the way this course is laid out, we had 4 major writing assignments, starting with the new product research paper that was due in week 2. And then we followed up several weeks later with the new product event proposal. So essentially that was the nuts and bolts of the plan you'll be presenting today, or this week rather. But in that case, you were meant to kind of conceptualize and kind of basically lay out an event proposal for a new product of your choosing. And then, of course, the third piece of this was the sponsorship proposal. Now, in many cases, you look for sponsorships primarily for fundraisers and other things like that, but they are not exclusive to fundraisers. In fact, lots of companies these days, to incur cost, will also tap the shoulder of a good partner to help them launch their respective brand or product. And usually you'll find a company, and a lot of you guys have done a great job with this, finding sponsorship partners that have good synergy with your product launch. So that was due in week 10. And then, of course, now here we are, week 16, and the big event is upon us. So we'll talk about that today. But one of the questions I received this morning was from a student asking about, can we use stuff from our previous assignments? And absolutely yes is the answer there. Now, know this, I'll be looking at it with fresh eyes. So if you had typos in the first one, you want to make sure you fix that, or do what you have to make this as tight as it can be. So toward this end, if you look in our Canvas page, you'll find, let's go take a look at it, just because I want to show you where it is. So here's our Canvas page, my version of this, the instructor version, student view. Let's go look to that. So you see down here is final project stuff. Okay, now toward the bottom here, you've got a couple different examples. One called the Stash Bash student example, which is the paper, one part of your grade, and of course the presentation piece, which is also part of your grade. So each of these roughly equate to 100 points each. Obviously the paper is a little more involved maybe. This presentation is about 5 to 7 minutes long, and it's kind of summarizing things. And we'll talk more about this presentation, but essentially the nuts and bolts of this presentation is that imagine you're giving an elevator pitch to the folks the morning of your event. What are you going to tell them if they don't know anything? And usually it's sort of talking about, the event itself, the key points in the event. You'll probably want to show the map and maybe some events throughout the day, maybe even talk about your marketing efforts. So I'll show you an example of that here coming up. There's another example here of another paper. So there's 2 papers here that you can take a look at to draw upon. But essentially what it is the PowerPoint presentation is like a simplified version of what's in your paper. Okay. So you can find that there. And this is so toward the top, sort of. And then obviously there's a spot up here. And if I go off and turn off the student view, you'll see it. So everybody's got a bucket up here. Let's go into this once real quick. So this is where you put your materials up here. We'll walk all through this. And this is the grading rubric for the materials, these 6 items here. Okay. And I'll walk you through these in a second. And then this is where you'll put your recorded presentation in your learning group. Okay. You've each been assigned a learning group. And this is really a 5 to 7 minute presentation summarizing your event plan. You are to use Kaltura. So let's go show you how to do that. So essentially you go down to reply here. And here is the Kaltura button. Takes a second to load, and then hit add new. Now what's going to happen is if you want to use a Kaltura capture, which I recommend you do, you'll need to download the app. I have the app already, but if you don't have that, it's a simple thing to do. And then of course it'll allow you to record directly using Kaltura. Other options are to record it any way you wish, and then upload it with the media upload button here. Now, what you can do, if you can't get Kaltura to work the right way, you can use Zoom or some other recording device. What I want you to do is to record yourself so you're on screen and your PowerPoint is also visible. So you're presenting and we're seeing that on one video. So that can be done very easily with Zoom, and I know it can be done with Kaltura Capture. You just got to play around with it a little bit. So then once it's uploaded, now give it some time. Obviously, that can take a while. So you got to just give yourself enough time to do that. Then it should load up in here eventually. And then what I want you to do is attach your PowerPoint slides beneath this. Okay, right down here. Now, what if you're having trouble with Kaltura, which often is the case? Let's go back to our home page here quickly. So having trouble with Kaltura, read this. Toward the bottom here, you'll see this. So check this link out, but here are the steps here. And this may help save you some heartburn with regard to your loading up your Kaltura recording. So take a look at that and make sure you're following the rules here. This may actually help expedite your upload to your thread. Okay, so let's go through this now. Let's go back up. Let's pick on Learning Group 1. Oops. So here's Learning Group 1. Each person will have one of these. And of course, oh, wait. Yeah, so essentially, once you record your presentation, you pop this up here, and then the other thing you want to do is peer review. So within your groups, you'll be asked to also provide feedback on each of your peers within your group. So I believe there's probably 5 or 6 per group times 4. Yeah, that makes good sense. So you'll have 4 or 5 fellow students who will also be publishing theirs, and then you want to provide them with feedback by Sunday, May 9th. Okay, so there's some wiggle room here between the 7th and the 9th. I get there's going to be some kind of shucking and jiving here to get these loaded. But then by the Sunday at midnight, 11:59, let's try to get those reviews in. Here's what I want you to say about each. Tell me how well they did. Explain tell them how well they did, explaining the details of their new product launch. How would you rate the overall event strategy? And then be specific. And then, of course, how would you rate the overall quality and clarity and effectiveness of their presentation? Again, imagining that you're giving this to a group of new people who are about to go work your event for you. Did they do a good job of explaining kind of the expectations and the general sort of understanding and makeup of the event itself? Okay, so that's the discussion piece. Let's now go to where you put all your good stuff, all the materials for your campaign, and that goes in here. So I'll walk you through this here quickly, but this is what you'll find in your paper, and you'll see the examples that I provided here. They're all kind of in the paper. So you can usually got 10 or 12 pages, maybe a little less, but that includes things like your press release and your event map and other things as well. So that's all rolled up into one document. So you can do it that way if you wish. But here's what I'm looking for. The first one's first a detailed written description of the event, which you can get from assignment 1, right? And I would revise and update that as necessary so that it reflects best your most current state. Because a lot of times these things change as you go forward. From assignment 2, identify the promotional opportunities for potential sponsors. So talk about sponsorships and the opportunities from assignment 2. And then C, a detailed explanation of the event preparation. So explain who will do pre-event preparation, when will it begin, when will it take place, and what will be completed. And then talk about any training needed. Okay, and then D, detailed explanation of the event itself. What will take place, when will it take place, who, and so on and so forth. So answer these questions here as best you can. And again, you can probably get a lot of this information from assignment 2 that you did. Then describe your plan for breakdown and cleanup. Who will do all the work for that? Should be a section there. And then E is the last section, is first big part here. Discuss how you plan to evaluate the event itself. And we've, anything you referred to from the books. Obviously, we've done focus groups. We've talked about focus groups. We've talked about post-event meetings with both attendees and with people who've worked the event itself. And so it's over. What's your plan there? How do you handle that? Okay, so that's the first big chunk, meaty part here. And this all is sort of written in narrative format with images as you see fit. Then, of course, the next thing is a map. Now, some of you mentioned that you're doing your events at an already existing trade show, which is fine. As best you can, you want to locate that and then appoint that with your own information as best you can. Okay, but either way, I'd like to see a map, and you've seen some examples of that now. Show me, how to that you've got a thoughtful sort of layout to your event. The third one, calendar schedule, identifies events and activities and tasks that must be carried out by who and indicates when the task will take place. So we want to make sure that that's as specific as it can be. And then, of course, a press release. Now, most of you guys are PR folks, but there's a chapter we discussed in class regarding press releases. And essentially what I'm looking for here is how to pull that together and summarize this event of yours into a press release format. And the key thing here is to make sure it's newsworthy best you can, so editors will pick up on it. Okay, and then, of course, the IMC part here. And you'll see some examples in the upcoming slides, but essentially I'm looking for here is kind of a thorough sort of plan that includes, obviously, recruitment and upfront. How do you get people to sign up for your event? That's one of the biggest challenges, right? So you can't start a week before the event. So show me kind of what you're doing in advance of that event to drum up interest and support and attendance and the tactics you're going to be using. And then the last thing is an operational brief that you want to pull together in addition to your 5 to 7 minute video. This brief is a one-sheeter that you'll hand out to your event. You're not really going to technically hand this out, but I want you to do this one-sheet operational team presentation to your extended staff. So this is one-sheeter, and I'll show you what it looks like when we go to it. That summarizes everything. It's like a one-page event brief, we call it. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So those are the things. I know it seems like a lot, but a lot of the stuff you guys already have pretty much nailed down, I think, through the course of the semester here. So time to put a fine point on things. Gussy it up. Obviously, typos and mistakes and grammar are a no-no. So know that I'll be looking for that. Make this as professional as you possibly can. The whole shebang is worth 200 points altogether. Now, generally speaking, you can say the paper, this first section here, is worth 100. These 6 items here, and then, of course, the presentation and your peer review is also worth 100 points. It's a pretty meaty score there. So good luck with that. And certainly as we move forward here closer to Friday, let me know if you have any questions on this, direction here. All right, so let's go now to my example. So take a look at the paper. The papers, there's 2 examples now in Canvas that you can take a look at. So you get a feel for this. Now, just, it's a little bit different. When I did this class last time, this example is from like a year and a half ago, I believe, when we had an actual client, Teal to Heal, one of our past students done this. So that was a fundraiser event plan, right? But really the tenets and the basics are the same for our event product launch event. Okay, so don't worry about that. Nonetheless, we do have an example I want to share with you from Catherine and Kaylee, who did this for their fictitious company, Collective Events, for a product called Stasher, which was a new product that they uncovered for storage bags. So they did that, and their partnership was the Aquarium of the Bay in San Francisco. So they planned their event in San Francisco. So cool location and a good selection there. Obviously, the event itself was meant to support the message for Stash Bash, which is mindful sort of ways to preserve food without hurting the environment. So good cross-pollination of messages there, and of course, a good partnership between Stash and the Aquarium of the Bay in San Francisco. So high marks there. They want us to know some key points here. Here's the date, event purpose, the need, our edge, our partnership, all important information to note. And then of course, here's their map. So they took some time here and modified a map for their own purposes here. And you see some branding here even, which I like. So the map should look professional and should look consistent with your event. So anytime you can add branding and add value to that, that's great. Of course, also you've got the basics here, and they walked us through a bit of kind of where things are and how they work. And then they also added a promotional calendar. So this is an important one also to think about. How are you going to promote? I'd like to know a little bit about that and what's the plan there. And then our passion and drive for the environment. Of course, this is their closing slide here. And again, they did a lot of kind of open-ended conversations about this here. And like I said, it was meant to fire up the troops about the event itself, mostly. So, you know, that's a good example, I think, of what I'm looking for these presentations. So, again, like I said, you know, walk us through that, your presentation. Now, in this case, it's individual. So walk us through what you're thinking, 5 to 7 minutes. And then what I want you to do is publish your recorded video and then put your PowerPoint beneath that thread reply. Okay, let's move on to the final exam. So here's the final exam. Now, it's kind of weird doing this, you know, asynchronously. I've kind of struggled with that, but I think best practice here is to give you guys enough time to start it when you can. So toward that end, May 11th is when it starts. It'll open at 7 p.m., be open for 36 hours, and closes on May 13th at 7 a.m. So between that period of time, every student should initiate the exam itself. The exam is like this midterm, so you'll have a variety of things, a lot of matching, a multiple choice, and maybe a few other sort of open-ended questions, sort of hodgepodge, but and it's not cumulative. It's of course the second half of the semester, so it starts with chapter 6 and goes all the way through to chapter 10. So here are the keys. So I'm not going to read through these here, but you should be familiar with each of these chapters and the things I've got listed here to the right for each of these. So you see, I spend more time on chapter 6 and 7. 7 is all about promotional publicity and building event teams. So there's a fair amount of questions from there, maybe less so from chapter 8 and chapter 9, and even chapter 10. But either way, you should be familiar with these terms and sort of the basics of each of these, and you'll do just fine. So that is the final exam study guide. And again, like I said, let me know if you have any questions on this. And then last things I want to leave you with are just 5 tips for how to break into event planning from yours truly. Now, when I started out because it was part of my job. I was a marketing, I started as a coordinator 1, which is the lowest of low, right? You can go up to coordinator 3 where I used to work. And then I became an assistant marketing manager. Then I became a marketing manager. Then I became a senior marketing manager. Then I became a director eventually. But there's a total pathway here. But along the way, one thing I always did was manage events. So, and I didn't have, a ton of express training on that. I learned by School of Hard Knocks in a lot of cases until I got into college, my grad school years. But nonetheless, you can learn a lot by doing. So in this class, what you've got going on here is you've got a class that's taught you the basics. Right now, as much as possible, I like to make sure that you guys have takeaways that'll allow you to find work in this field. Toward that end, I've had a guest speaker come out and talk about that. My brother-in-law, Joe Oakland. If you haven't seen that yet, you can go back and watch that. But really interesting conversation we had with him. But we've also appointed the class lecture and notes and other sort of discussion threads with, the COVID sort of crisis and what that's meant to the industry. So as much as possible, it's important to get your knowledge on, I would say, and stay abreast of things. Of course, classes like this can be parlayed into a legitimate careers. And I've had a surprising number of students who've taken this class and then gone on to work in event marketing. So it is entirely feasible. You don't need to have a lot of experience and knowledge, just some to get started. But education is important, right? So you guys have that under in your hip pocket. I would say this, in my opinion, this is my opinion only. You don't need to go on and get a lot more than what you've learned here. If you've got a basic understanding of marketing and you're organized and you've embraced the materials in this class this semester, there's no reason why you can't go in and confidently start working in this field. Okay, that's the first point. Get your knowledge on as much as you can. This class certainly should help. The second thing is parlay your experiences. Anytime you've done any work, let's even working for your sister's wedding, for example, any hospitality experience even is relevant experience, I would say. So you want to parlay those experiences as much as you can. One thing I always kind of marvel at is students and their lack of ability to talk positively about themselves and their experiences. So if you think hard enough, you can and dig hard enough, you'll find examples of events that you ran or even helped, put together. You want to kind of lean into that as much as you possibly can. Okay. And the other thing I will say too is if you don't have experience, a lot of it, trying to find a way to get it. For example, I'm the advisor for WA, the Whitewater Advertising Association. Prior to the pandemic, every year we ran this thing called Convergence, which was an event, a full-on event that our students manage. So that's great experience. Anytime you can volunteer even to get experience like that will certainly help you guys as your students still. So of course, can't say this enough. Also, internships are great. Even if you've got internships where you're working as a marketing coordinator or an advertising person of some note, and you do some event planning, that's also a great way to parlay that experience. Third point, creative versus logical. So one thing I love about this type of work is it's a combination of the both, the creative side of things or your right brain, and then of course the logical left brain. You need to have both to be successful in event planning, because obviously the logical side of things helps you create plans and timeliness and all the SMART goals and everything else you think of that are logical, of course, has to be there, right? So you have to have that. But equally important is the creative side of it as well. So the left or the right brain. The right brain obviously focuses on some of the aha moments and some of the creative executions that people come back for. So here you got this combination of these two here, creative and logical. So consider both sides. Okay, so third thing kind of builds off the creative piece here, but thinking outside the box. When it comes to hunting for jobs within events, don't limit yourself. All types of organizations hold events. So essentially what I'm saying here is don't just limit yourself to companies that support events and promote themselves as event marketers. You can do and find work. And in fact, I worked at where I used to work at Briggs & Stratton. We had 6 people working in the events marketing group alone. So they had full-time jobs doing just events. So you can find stuff within larger companies. And of course, Joe Oakland, my brother-in-law, who works for Dursey, big company, right? So there's a lot of different ways to look at finding employment. It doesn't have to just be a company that specializes in events alone. You can find a full service agency that specializes in events, among other things as well. So I'd say cast a wider net there and think more broadly. Last one here is make a connection. If you learn nothing from this class, and of course we talked about personal power and how you can recruit people, getting good at that certainly will help you well in every case, especially when it comes to networking, right? So first thing I'll say about connections is if you're not on LinkedIn, you should be, but that's a great place to start making those professional connections. And it's one of those necessary evils, I say, for us folks who are in college, especially, and looking to get into some sort of job post-graduation. But it's not a one-sided street, right? You can't expect others to continuously help you. You need to go out there and make an effort to reach out to others as well and be an active, engaged participant in the connection process, which is essentially social media and, those face-to-face whenever you can get those in. Okay, so that's the last one there. And things are going to fall your way. If you're really interested in working in this field, I hope you are. Making those connections and networking is really, really important. All right, so last slide I'm going to leave you guys with here is just I'm hoping that I instilled some passion for you guys yeah, for event planning. It really is a very robust, and in spite of COVID-19, I believe will bounce back in meaningful ways. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And toward that, I would say, just thinking about events themselves, I think most of you guys agree. I think assignment or one of the last discussion posts was all about what's the future. I think that was discussion post 9. What's the future of event planning? And most of you guys said, based on what you've learned so far in this class, it's going to be a hybrid of some kind, right? You're going to have, ways for people to attend events remotely. You're also going to have folks who prefer the face-to-face, and you'll probably have a hodgepodge mix in most cases of this new frontier we find ourselves in. So technology is going to play a big role in that. So it'll be interesting to see the next 5 years. And if you're excited about this, I think it's worthwhile to consider looking into this as we get through the pandemic here and we solve things. What's that going to look like? And can you be an active partner in some future here with regard to event planning? So I certainly hope that's the case. And again, this slide here is all about the left brain, right brain. I love the right brain, left brain dichotomy. I tend to have both. I'm more strong in the right brain, more creative. But I've built the muscle up on my left brain here through different means. And I would say one thing you can do is, if you're not very organized, maybe consider taking an accoutrement to your education in the form of planning, business planning or management. There's a lot of tools out there, a lot of classes out there to help you kind of get organized. When you have a lot of things, a lot of balls in the air, that can be invaluable to your left brain thinking. So, all right. With that, I'll say thank you to you guys. Final exam, again, like I said, is on May 11th, Tuesday, May 11th. Opens at 7 a.m., not 10 a.m. and to 12 p.m. like it says there. So let me have any questions on that. Of course, let me know if you have any questions on anything. And I hope you enjoyed the class. I honestly prefer face-to-face here. It's a much better class that way, but I still hope you guys got something out of this semester. And good luck with your other finals and exams. And hopefully I'll see you guys again next semester. All right, take care.